Bernie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to ask you just right off the bat, you are a husband, a father, a business owner, a leader in your own community. What makes you run for office now when most Americans truly, they don't trust the government and many of them don't trust politicians? Why now? Why are you running?
Because I've seen career politicians, people like Joe Biden and Sherrod Brown, take this country off a cliff. Our country has real problems. And the reason for that is because we have people that have never done anything other than being elected official, go down to Washington, D.C. They forget that they work for the people of Ohio. They forget that their job is to look out for American citizens. And they're taking this country off a cliff. And I could not sit by and watch that happen. Of course, COVID and the COVID policies that we saw where our government lost its ever living mind certainly was an inducement for me, but so was having grandchildren. Because what grandkids do is they give you a sense of mortality. And the question for me was, do I want to keep making money or do I want to go out there and serve this country that gave me every opportunity in the world to succeed? My parents brought me here when I was a kid. It's the greatest gift they gave me. And I want to repay that for my kids, my grandkids, and your grandkids.
Bernie, you just talked about migration. Springfield is on everyone's mind. I spent some time there this week twice. And talking with longtime Springfield residents and Haitians, it looks and sounds a lot different than what mainstream outlets and politicians are talking about. They're focusing on what they call baseless claims stated by Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and even you, saying that those statements have kicked up racism and xenophobia among the longtime residents there, causing some in the community to detest their new neighbors. But what we've witnessed is skyrocketing Haitian migrant populations, about 20,000, and that's grown to that number in just a few years. But really, a story that is about strains on all systems: education, economic, healthcare, government services, and more. And the migrants are not required or given the tools to properly assimilate, and they're vulnerable. Some would even say exploited. How did this happen in your view? And how would you work to fix the root causes?
Well, it happened because we have corrupt federal politicians that look out for foreign nationals more than they look out for American citizens. And let me just say this right off the bat, Jack. It's not the fault of the Haitian migrants. If I was in Haiti in a desperate position with my family, I would do exactly what they're trying to do, which is to get out of there and get into a country that where they can make a better living. It's not their fault, but it's also not the fault of the people who live in Springfield, who made it their home, who invested in a house, who send their kids to school. And I will also take the local officials off the hook. It's not the mayor's fault or the city council's fault or the governor's fault. This is all the fault of corrupt federal politicians. They've corrupted our immigration laws to allow people that enter the country illegally to falsely claim asylum, which gives them this shield from deportation, and then layer on that something called temporary protective status. Operative word, temporary, which also shields them from deportation, but it also makes them live a life that's 6 to 12 months at a time. They're dependent on some bureaucrat to give them a lifeline every 6 to 12 months. That's a cruel way to live. And I'll say one last thing. There are not 20,000 new jobs in Springfield, Ohio. That is absurd. The Intel project, with all its hoopla, may result in 3,000 jobs. The reality is, maybe if we exaggerate, there's a couple hundred jobs in Springfield that didn't exist before. I doubt that. We don't have the metrics, but let's go along with that number of 200. The reality is, we have 19,000 plus that are dependent on our social safety net that's designed to help American citizens. We do not have the resources in this country to bring in unskilled workers that can't speak English, that can't integrate into our population at scale, and use our fragile social safety net system to feed them, to clothe them, to house them, to provide them health care. That's insane, but it's the core problem of DC. They don't look out for American citizens. They look out for foreign nationals, foreign countries, everybody before America. And that's what's got to change.
Well, Bernie, thank you so much for talking about the American dream. I'm a legal immigrant. I've shared that with you. I was born in India, made in the United States, and we spent some time in Springfield together. Thank you for doing a press conference and directly talking to the media because, as Jack pointed out, mainstream media is missing the point. We have an illegal immigration crisis, and it took Springfield, Ohio to get national attention. My concern, though, Bernie, is what we're going to do and what are the solutions to move us forward now. And I thank you for making sure that you set the record straight. It's not the Haitians' fault. It's not the city's fault. It's not the American citizens' fault. It is truly government. I've watched Sherrod Brown. He's a 50-year politician, and he has voted against securing that border. So you have a personal immigration story. You have spent more time in Springfield, Ohio than Sherrod Brown. That just shows you how absent many of these politicians are. What are you going to do on day one to add safety and security back to Ohioans?
So this is a very easy problem to fix. It's just that we have such corrupt people in DC that they won't fix it. Number one, if you are an asylum seeker, you're going to seek asylum in the nearest safe country. Now, if that happens to be Mexico or Canada, you're going to come in through a designated port of entry. You're going to go back into whatever country you came from, whether it's Canada or Mexico or the safe country that you traveled to. And you're going to wait until we adjudicate your claim. If we find that you have a valid asylum claim, we'll welcome you to America. The reality is 99+% of these claims are totally false. So that's number one. President Trump, by the way, put that in as an executive order, which is what secured our border. The ACLU fought that in the Supreme Court. It lost because that's not the law today. So we're going to change the law permanently to fix that. That's number one. Number two, temporary protected status is intended for people who are visiting America legally that have a problem in their home country. We then give them an extension of their visa so that allows them to stay home while their country gets resolved. We are going to make it so that Congress has to act before temporary protective status is given, not some bureaucrat in the executive branch. Those two fixes are incredibly important. The third one is we're going to designate the Mexican drug cartels foreign terrorist organizations. We're going to work with Mexico, get Mexico's agreement to allow us to go in there with them to wipe them off the face of the earth and make it clear to China if they send one drop of precursor chemicals to Mexico, they will see tariffs that will make their heads spin because we're not going to allow them to continue to murder American citizens. We're going to finish the wall and we're going to make it crystal clear. There's one path to America, the legal path. I'm going to give you a little anecdotal story about how corrupt and insane this administration is. There's something called a TN visa. Probably never heard of it. You're probably not a farmer if you're listening to this, but let me explain what that is. If you're a Mexican or Canadian national that gets an agriculture degree in college, you are allowed to come into the US for up to 3 years, work and add value, and then go back home. A legal path for good people that are going to come here and add value to our economy. The Biden administration, the same administration that flew 530,000 people this year on charter flights into America, putting them completely dependent on our social safety net, people like the ones that are in Springfield, Ohio. That same administration cut TN visas by 90%. You see, what they're trying to do is bring people that are going to be dependent on government, not people that add to our economy. It's exactly backwards. That's what we're going to fix. And I'll say one last thing. If you're in this country legally, get ready, make your plans. You need to leave the country because we're not going to allow people to live in America illegally. We're not going to reward you because you broke the law. There's millions of good people from all over the world that are following our laws, following our rules, and not being able to be granted access to the U.S. We're going to reward the people who follow the rules and follow the line, and we're going to deport everybody else.
Well, if I
give
could
you a
jump
chance.
in, Jack,
Oh,
just thank you for that because I think I've practiced immigration law. It is so important. Asylum seekers come and they're seeking asylum from something. They're running from something. It's generally persecution in their country. I visited the southern border, Bernie, and most of the Haitians I spoke to, when I said, "What are you running from?" They're running towards the American dream. They want a better job. And while I applaud that, there's such a long line for legal immigrants like your family, mine, and so many others that are waiting to come to America and to be granted the opportunity to live the American dream. And I think there's a big misconception, and I'm glad you talked about legal immigration. Many of these temporary protection status people that are in our country today, many came here illegally and then they were granted temporary protection status. Are you in favor of allowing for voluntary departure? That would mean you are allowing somebody, their status is up, they have the opportunity to voluntarily depart and then apply to come to the United States. That way, they have the freedom to come back as long as they haven't committed a crime. Would you be open to a policy like that?
What we're going to do is we're going to let TPS expire in February of 2026. And then we're going to have a regimen to say, look, we're going to go after the criminals. That's easy. We're going to go after them first. We're not going to continue, by the way, to house foreign nationals convicted of crimes in our jails. That's absurd. We're going to return them to their countries. And if you self-deport and then want to reapply for legal entrance to the U.S., the fact that you self-deported is certainly going to put you in a better position than if we had to chase you down and deport you ourselves. Look, it's very simple. You reward good behavior, you punish bad behavior. This has been going on for decades. Of course, Biden-Harris administration took it to a new level. Sherrod Brown doesn't care about the border at all. He pretends he's for working class Americans. You can't be somebody on the side of working class Americans and be for these types of border policies that drive up costs, drive down wages. This is a total fake populism that Sherrod Brown likes to spread. He thinks he says a few cliche words about the dignity of work. He has no idea what that means. He's never actually worked. There's a guy who's been in elected office his entire adult life and was with a silver spoon in his mouth, never had it hard as a full pay student to Yale, a major in Russian studies. Maybe that's where he gets his economic ideas. We're going to highlight all of this over the next 45 days, and we're going to finally retire the old commie.
Thanks for drilling down on that. In my time in Springfield, one of the things that comes to my mind is there's doing the right things and then there's doing the right things right. Certainly, it makes sense to give a hand up to someone that can have a better life and create a legacy here, but there's doing it the right way, legally, and in a way that helps those that are coming here integrate into our culture. There's an element of fairness in Springfield that is not being followed, and I think that is the tension point. I want to toggle here and flip to something else, though. I want to give you a chance, Bernie, to set the record straight. Your opponent claims you didn't pay workers of a dealership you once owned on the East Coast and that you shredded documents. What's the full story there?
This is coming from a man who's shredded the Constitution. So the reality is this, Jack, as you know, I started with one little tiny dealership, very proud that I took that one little tiny dealership and built $1 billion company in the auto industry, one of the largest car dealer groups in America, one of the most awarded car dealer groups in America, not just for sales, not just for taking care of customers, but for taking care of our team members, which is what we call them, never employees, always team members. Because I knew my job was very simple. If I recruited, hired, trained, and motivated and rewarded the best people, they would take the best care of my clients. The Cleveland Plain Dealer, no friend of mine, no friend of yours, awarded me best places to work in Northeast Ohio. I think Chris Quinn is trying to find every copy of that article and destroy it because, of course, they don't talk about it. So let's get to it. What happened in Massachusetts? I had one dealership up there. I built it in 2014. I sold it in 2018. A year after I sold the dealership, there was a claim made up to the Massachusetts Supreme Court from a salesperson at a furniture store called Sleepy's Furniture. He sued and said, hey, commissioned salespeople are entitled to overtime. That's not federal law. That's not Ohio law. It's not Kentucky law. It's not Florida law. Any of the states that I operated in, commissioned salespeople just are not entitled to overtime. That's been the rules forever. Well, the Massachusetts Supreme Court ruled that they should be entitled to overtime, which again, if I'm operating under those rules, that's what we would do. Unfortunately, the lunatics in Massachusetts made that ruling retroactive. So if every car dealership group, every commission business got sucked into it, that's what that case was all about. So that's number one. In terms of the documents, there was a very activist judge that didn't like the fact that I was fighting this because I thought it was absurd. And during the trial, they asked whether how I knew that the salespeople didn't work overtime. I said, well, they didn't punch in, they didn't punch out. The paycheck said they worked 40 hours. The team member manual said you're not allowed to work overtime without permission. And I would get a monthly report of who worked overtime, the people who actually were entitled to overtime. And he said, well, where's that document? I said, well, I would look at it and throw it away. And he said, you threw away evidentiary documents? I said, no, no, listen, the base data is still there. It's electronic. ADP, the largest payroll company in the world, is who we use. They still have the information. We can recreate it. He goes, no, you destroyed documents. And he was doing that to prejudice the jury, which is what he did. And the jury award, by the way, was in a few thousand, a little over $10,000. And over time, the rest of it was attorney's fees and penalties. So look, Jack, here's the thing. Sherrod Brown has to talk about this. If Sherrod Brown doesn't talk about this, then we're going to talk about his record of open borders. We're going to talk about his record of voting for the Inflation Reduction Act, which stripped $300 billion out of Medicare to fund electric vehicle subsidies. His total embrace of the Green New Deal, which is driving up the cost of internal combustion engine cars so that force people to drive really expensive electric cars they don't want, the assault on American energy, the fact that this guy is the grim reaper of manufacturing in Ohio. If he visits a plant in Ohio, it's probably because it's closing, right? This is a guy who's got a terrible, abysmal record, 200,000 manufacturing jobs lost under his watch. If it wasn't for Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, the votes he would have taken would have launched this country even further in debt. This is who he is. Hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine and no money to secure our own border. And that's the problem. Sherrod Brown cares more about foreign nationals than he does about American citizens. I won't. I'm always going to put the interests of Ohio and America first and only. That's why I wear this flag on my lapel pin, not the flag of Haiti, not the flag of Ukraine, not the flag of any other country, the flag of the United States of America, because that's what I was told by the Marine who swore me in to become a United States citizen. Only bow to one flag and one flag only. Our elected leaders should be forced to go through that process.
Well, I think it's so important when you talk about the truth. One of the things that's just not contested, it's just a fact, even though people like CNN want to talk about how we're doing well, and Kamala Harris and now Sherrod Brown are trying to push this joy campaign on us. Bernie, we are struggling in this economy. 20% more for gas and groceries to 30%. Rent is unaffordable. Most people can't afford a home. We're looking at about 63% of Americans, and that trickle down from federal government and their spending, from even Sherrod Brown stamping yes to the Inflation Reduction Act, which actually increased inflation for everyday Ohioans. He continues to talk about the dignity of work as we're losing jobs. He continues to turn his back on Ohioans when he's in DC. What is your solution? And again, I say this on day one because I'm telling you, I go to the grocery store and I watch mothers. They're ringing up item after item and figuring out what they can afford and what they have to put back. What are we going to do so that we can make life affordable again? We're paying about $25,000 a year under Sherrod Brown's economy.
We did it under President Trump. We had low interest rates, we had low inflation, we had low prices. We did it because we unleashed the American ingenuity engine, which is American businesses, by giving them a good regulatory environment, a good tax policy, encouraging people to work, not having insane amounts of illegal immigration, which takes away American jobs and raises the cost for everybody. Look, when you have 12 million new people coming into a country in 3.5 years, what do you think is going to happen to the cost of housing? Right? It's pretty common sense. So we're going to make certain that we go back to the policies that worked under President Trump. That's how we're going to restore this economy. Look, if you want to know what the vision of Kamala Harris and Sherrod Brown is, watch the movie Hunger Games. They're the ones that look down on everybody else. They're the elites. Martha's Vineyard loves Sherrod Brown. And by the way, 50 people illegals went to Martha's Vineyard. They were pulled out of there by the National Guard within 24 hours. Well, you know what? 20,000 people going to Springfield, no problem at all, because see, they're the deplorables. They're the working class Americans that Sherrod Brown thumbs his nose to. In fact, mocks them. And I say that, mocks them, because you can imagine with his Hollywood celebrities and his San Francisco liberals and his buddies in Martha's Vineyard, he probably sits there and says, look, I got them fooled. I say dignity of work. I wear a canary on my lapel pin. I mess up my hair. I ruffle up my suit. And these dopes think I'm for them. That's exactly what he says. He has no idea what it's like to work. He has no idea what it's like to struggle. I do. And I'm going to make certain that I always fight for the American worker because, look, my job is simple. My job is to go to DC and put the interest of the American people first and foremost above everything else. That's what's missing in Washington, D.C. That's what President Trump has done. That's why they hate him, because there's lots of Republicans that have also gone along with this idea that they should advocate for anybody but Americans. That's what changes in January 2025.
Bernie, I know your calendar is full, and I appreciate the time today. I do want to shift gears one more time, staying in the realm of setting the record straight, because I think it's fair. Your opponent also claims you don't have college degrees. You say you do. I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
I don't have a degree in Russian studies, guilty as charged. Look, Jack, this is how desperate they are. Everybody who's watching this, you know what LinkedIn is. My LinkedIn profile forever had my degree from the University of Michigan. I'm proud that I got a bachelor's in business administration. And I thank some of the reporting for pointing out that it was with high distinction. There was a clerical error made by one of my admins 7, 8, 9 years ago that put that I had an MBA. It was a BBA. By the way, nobody would have cared. So they made a whole light of this. What they want is a headline, though, Jack, to confuse people. Say, this guy lie about going to college? Absolutely not. They don't have one single statement in which I ever said that I had an MBA. And again, my LinkedIn profile has the exact opposite. But I'm going to give you a little insight in how corrupt the media is. The way they got that document is because they read through the thousands of pages of documents. In this case, that had nothing to do with me. It was a trial between a dealer in Florida against Infinity. And I was one of the witnesses. So thousands of pages of documents. They got this one document that had the error. What they didn't put in their reporting is that when I had forgotten about it, honestly, when I went up on stage, they ask you, can you state your name? Can you state your address? How many kids do you have, et cetera? They asked, where did you go to school? I told them, what was your degree? Bachelor's of Business Administration. So that very document, the same case that they're using to say I lied, they leave that out. Look, we have a corrupt media. We have a corrupt and rotten media. We have to fix that. But we, the people, have our job to do, which is to get past the corruption in the media and understand this is a very simple election. Life under President Trump was very good. Low prices, secure borders, energy independence, peace around the world. Life under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris with Sherrod Brown's full throttle support, almost 100% voting record with them, has been absolutely abysmal. That's what the election comes down to. Go vote on October 8th. If you're listening to this, make a plan to vote on October 8th. Vote early. Vote 11 times. Go vote yourself and then bring 10 people with you. That's how we're going to win this election.
Bernie, thank you so much for your time. It's so important for voters to hear from you. And as Jack said, for you to truly debunk what's going on out there. There's a lot of garbage from mainstream media, and we so appreciate you setting the record straight.
Thank you. And thank you both for being the voice of rational media in Ohio. Not a lot of you. We have to really fix that. Connie Schultz, Sherrod Brown's wife, works for the Ohio media. He's best friends with all of them. She frames the articles. It shouldn't be allowed. It's completely gross and corrupt, but that's okay. We, the people, are smarter. We're going to win this election. Did I mention vote early? Vote on October 8th. Make sure you send your friends out there. Go on BernieMoreno.com, get a yard sign, pass out some literature, send out emails, make some phone calls. We have to vote like this country depends on it, because it does. Thank you both.
Thank you, Bernie.